Evening, everyone. Welcome to our July 10th, 2024 Planning Board meeting. Would you all please rise and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Steve, this could be our first remote attendance take.
Maybe since the days of COVID, yes. Chairman John Curry.
Here.
Vicki Gannon.
Here.
Jack Mattis.
Here.
Bruce Prince. Anthony Sutton.
Here.
Christopher Zaberto.
Here. Thank you. Just in case there's anybody out there thinking there's going to be a public hearing on Ross Drive, there is not tonight. The applicant has requested we postpone that, but we are going to discuss it in a different manner. First on our agenda is the minutes from June 12th, 2024. Anyone have any additions? If not, I make a motion, we accept the minutes as they were presented.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And I'm going to have Dave explain a little bit more about this. Is there someone here from Somers Point, from the golf course? Yes. You want to come up, but just let me read it for the record. This is Somers National Golf Course, which is at 1000 West Hill Drive. Site plan modifications. It's a request for a 6-month time extension from August 10th, 2024 until February 10th, 2025 for approved site plan and signature by the planning board chair to meet the conditions of the approved resolution, which is 2022-05 in accordance with Town Code Section 170-114H. Before you give a presentation, I want you to just let Dave explain to you what we have a little.
Yes, Steve, in the code, there's a section that calls for time for signature of site plan.
Yes.
Okay. So it says that the approval of the site plan by the planning board, including approval with modification, shall expire 1 year after the date of adoption of the planning board granting approval, unless all conditions of such approval have been met and a plan has been submitted to and signed by planning board chairman. So there were 3 conditions in the approval resolution. One had to do about addressing forthcoming comments on the draft stormwater management. The other was the applicant shall prepare a construction cost estimate to serve as the basis for town engineering. And then the third was reimbursement of outstanding review fees. So I don't think that you've satisfied, or your client has satisfied, those 3 conditions. So I don't know that this board can extend the site plan approval beyond the August 10th date.
So to give a little color on the history here, approval was originally granted in August of 2022. This has been extended twice now, and it's an extension of the time for that signature is how we phrased it previously, and that was how the extensions have been granted. So we're now 2 years out from the original approval, or will be next month. So from our perspective, there's no change in what we've been requesting. I don't know if there's any more dialogue we need to have as to the nature of the request versus.
Well, I'm just looking at the code now because there was an issue previously where the planning board only granted 6 months instead of a year, and then that situation was cured. But now we're just looking at the code, and as you said, it's going on 2 years, and there needs to be some movement as to first satisfying the conditions and then actually starting the project.
Yeah, on that front, I did speak with the club as recently as this morning just to get a sense of their timing. Obviously, remember 6 months prior, they were dealing with the cleanup. That's all taken care of. As of November 2022, the club has been on the market for sale. They've been working with potential buyers. And I can tell you that there is continued interest from outside buyers, but even barring whether that potential sale does or does not go through, The property is currently owned by Heritage Hills Holding, LLC, which is a two-person partnership. And those partners are in discussion for one to buy out the other. And I have been assured by them that they're anticipating that applications will be filed with the town by Q1 of next year to move forward with the approved plans.
But if I'm not mistaken, I think what he's trying to tell you is you still have to meet those requirements before the
Correct.
site plan. And quite frankly, what's going to happen is if it's not signed by the 10th, you're going to have to go all the way back to ground zero.
Which
That-
why we're requesting the 6-month extension of time to sign.
But these requirements have not been met.
Yeah. Have you talked to your clients about when they can meet?
I can certainly ask.
I mean, they know about it.
I think this is coming as a little bit of news that the extension would allow them to additional time to complete those requirements that are prerequisites for signature. So
Well,
I
I'd like to get other board opinion, what the rest of the board thinks about this. I'm just one of tonight one.
I would ask council.
Yeah, that's me.
I think,
would ask
yes.
Jerry, I would ask Jerry for extra color around the code that we're interpreting it correctly and
It is interpreting correct. I mean, you're 0 for 3 on the condition?
As far as I know, yes.
So unfortunately, I don't have a copy of the code in front of me, Jerry.
now you do.
You might want to put that
Paragraph H.
to you too. Yeah. Jerry, that mic closer to you. Yeah. The mic a little closer to you, please.
Yeah, it says approval shall expire unless all conditions of approval have been met and a plan has been submitted and signed. And we've been asking for extensions of that time period.
And the board is apparently less than willing at this time to grant another extension based upon the fact that nothing is done at his hearing.
That's correct.
So obviously this is,
May not be set to approve this extension.
understood. This is obviously, if it's an issue of the board's preference, I think that's different than an issue of code interpretation. So I think to start, I'd like to understand what we're discussing.
That's what I was gonna say. Is this a permissive thing or is it a requirement?
Looks like a requirement on my part that they have these conditions met
Before the signature, that's correct.
Right.
But that's how I was.
Correct. There's no question that the conditions need to be met before signature. The extension requests that have been granted to date, the extension request before you now is a 6-month extension of the time to meet those requirements and obtain that signature.
And I don't see any mandatory language there, but I don't see anything other than the board's discretion, which in the last couple of months you have exercised and not given everybody what they've wanted, that in delays in other cases. So I think it's the consultant's concern that it not be granted because the conditions have not been met and there's been no indication that they're in the process of being met. And the fact that there's, legal mumbo jumbo going on does not change those facts. So I would say it would be up to the board.
Yes, I
to
agree.
Determine whether they want to grant this extension or not.
Yeah.
What about if we split the difference? We can do any extension, right? And give them, say, 3 months, and then basically that's it.
You could, well, my suggestion would be do another 6 months and say you have to have these conditions met within the 6 months.
Give them a date certain. I mean, they're not like horrendous conditions.
No.
Yeah, I think
One of them-
What's the board's feeling?
I would be comfortable with the 6-month extension, knowing that it would be a disaster, but it would be problematic to deny the extension and have the current owners battle over, will they sell to each other or will they not? This has been ongoing for years. I'm very familiar with it, one way or another.
Mhm.
And that would be my suggestion. Go 6 months.
You had indicated that the two parties are looking at initiating an action in the first quarter. So I'd like to get a little more certainty about where we would land in 6 months, because I think that should we more explicitly say that, how do we tie it onto a date in January?
So 6 months, if I can provide some clarity, would expire February 10th, 2025.
Mhm.
Extension were to be granted, at which point, if the signature is not in place, their approvals would lapse and they would have to restart the process.
Do we know when our meeting is going to be relative to that? We know when our meeting would be.
We haven't done 25 yet.
So it just,
What was the, what was?
February 10th.
February 10th, 6 months from August 10th.
I left my phone at home. I can't look at it again. I just want to get something that sort of programmatically makes sense as a date.
Yeah.
So we're not
That's the second
doing
month
things.
of February.
It would be the 12th.
And we would meet that.
So,
Wednesday.
We would meet then
on
on
the
the
12th.
12th.
Right.
So
Keep the same pattern that we've been doing.
extend it to February 12th. If you want to do it at date certain, you could do it February 12th,
If that's the
if that's
discretion of the board.
correct.
Date of the meeting. I think that makes sense.
With the
Yeah.
under-
Yeah, I
understanding that
but-
those three items
Conditions have been met,
You could
correct?
also Make the conditions may have to be met before that date. There's no.
Right.
Reason to have it.
There's probably not going to be another extension.
Right. If they can meet the conditions prior to that,
Then it's a moot point.
right.
Can you put-
Then it gets signed, then.
Right.
As the-
That's right. If you do meet them before, obviously, then I'll sign.
Of course,
Okay.
of course.
Fair enough?
Can you put language?
Yeah,
A resolution that specifies that that is about the last extension. If those three criteria are not met, no further.
It'll be reflected in the minutes, correct? Yeah.
Okay.
We understand and we're grateful for you working with us and giving us this additional time. It's
Well, then let me, for the record, I'll make a motion that we grant a 6-month time extension starting August 10th, 2024, up until February 12th, 2025, for approved site plan signature by the planning board chair to meet the conditions of the approved resolution 2022-05 in accordance with Town Code Section 170-114H. Pursuant to the 3 conditions that you can outline, Dave, in the minutes.
Yes, they're the conditions, they're actually conditions 1, 2, and 3, conditions required prior to signing of the site plan. It's on page 6 of 8 of resolution number 2205.
Right.
Can we also ask that that applicant should furnish a narrative explaining how these conditions have been satisfied prior to the meeting, so that we're all on the same page that they have been. Maybe they will be far in front of it, but
Sure.
Okay.
You add
well, the town code rides, right? We can't sign it. We start back from, I don't think you have to include that language. It's already codified
Yeah,
in
let's,
town code.
Right.
we're fine.
Is there a second on that motion?
second,
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Much. Have a nice night.
thank you.
Next on our agenda is a continuation of public hearing for 24 Ross Drive for steep slope protection and stormwater management and erosion and sediment control. It's application on the town map 16.10-2-66. I've had conversations with our town planner on this, and I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I believe this is at least the 3rd meeting in a row and maybe the 4th with no public hearing. And precedent in other towns is that you don't keep continuing. And I'd like to feel the board out what they think of this, but I would like to ask the applicant that at the next meeting, if they don't have something, we're gonna drop this item and start from square one. And I believe what we're looking for revised, you can help me on this, Steve. We're looking for some revised engineering.
We're looking for the applicant to address the open comments, which are primarily technical from us, yes, and also the concerns of the board from the prior discussion on it. And they have To date, not yet submitted any response to those comments. And so that would
And our
give
comments,
the public something to comment on.
and our comments on the site walk too.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out. I wonder see how the board feels.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you, Chairman. The sense that I got throughout this entire presentation has been that it was never intended for this to this long and drawn out, right? I think the applicant thought they were doing the right thing by beginning work on the house, not knowing some of the legality behind it, didn't get the right permits. They got caught up in this, and I don't feel like they are going to ultimately finish this project, to be honest. That's just a sense that I have. I'm just basing that on the constant delays, and it's a relatively simple project, but in the same token, I understand the circumstances with the multi-owners and some of the other stuff that went on there. So I think we do have to kind of draw a hard line and say, we've given you guys ample time to sort of get your presentation together and let us know what you're going to do, and to address the technical issues that were raised by our engineers. And otherwise, they're going to have to cease and then represent this when they're ready.
I think a public hearing is an information gathering process. We don't open it until we think we have enough information for the public to be able to comment on it. It would be blindsiding if we didn't think we had enough information. More information became apparent, and I think to carry the public hearing on, and I don't think we have anybody here tonight, but for the public to spend their time to come here when there's not going to be a discussion, that's not a good use of their time either. So,
And like Steve said, his questions have not been answered.
yeah, so
Comments, I should say.
when the applicant is prepared to come back, certainly we'll, be willing to hear what he has to say. The applicant.
So I guess this information will get back to them. We can direct Wendy to.
Well,
send
yeah,
them.
yes, I'll work with Wendy Getting on preparing a letter to the applicant indicating that the board, your preference that
Okay.
they need to come back, or otherwise the item would be dropped from the agenda.
So that are we going to give them one opportunity to come back with meaningful content? And if
Yeah.
not,
Yeah, the next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
fair
it's
notice.
notice, we're providing them with notice, yeah.
correct.
Because we don't want to waste anybody. It's also administrative to carry it over.
Yes.
It's another thing.
And quite frankly, there won't be a public hearing, even if they do come back, because we'll need to see the new information. Digest it and then we'll open the public hearing when everybody's heard the new information, hopefully. We all in agreement with this?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay.
my concern is that, so much time has lapsed since we opened the public hearing, that concerned neighbors or people who did want to make comment may not really be aware of what's happening.
That's the problem.
Yeah,
They
Right.
forget about it. That's
Right.
exactly. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Okay.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is Lawton Adams application for site plan approval for 260 Route 100. And this is for the construction of a proposed new building, approximately 8,450 square feet for retail, warehouse, and office use. The property is located at 260 Route 100, and it's an OLI, which is Office and Light Industry Zoning District. This board has done a site walk over there. I think I'd say we all were pretty impressed. Evening.
Good evening, Tim Allen, Bibbo Associates tonight, with me, Lawton Adams, Jesse and Nick, all part of the Adams family.
Sounds like a TV program.
Yes, click. I'm sure they've heard that before.
Yeah.
Never.
Just I've heard Tim Allen
Yeah.
times. Essentially, the plan really hasn't changed much since we saw it at sketch plan. The building is in the same spot, same size. We all walked the site. The site, essentially, it's basically putting new impervious surface on existing impervious surface for the most part. We had tweaked the parking, the auxiliary parking, on the side in front of the pole barn, just to flip the parking. In Steve's memo to us, there's code that says 40 feet to the property line, so we'll adjust that accordingly, going forward. The one thing that I'd like to discuss with the board and probably in more detail with Steve is the fact that we're talking about the stormwater. A lot of the comments were addressed on stormwater. The town code, land development as it's defined between 5,000 square feet and an acre doesn't need post-construction stormwater improvements. What I did on this plan was basically there were infiltrators that are below the will be the proposed building. And I just essentially moved them to be online with the drainage that's being caught to the back of the building now. So I'm not really proposing anything new with regard to post-construction stormwater. Essentially, I could take it off the plan and it'd still meet the code. It's something I'd like to discuss further with Steve in that, you know, it's not a requirement, it's kind of a bonus in terms of the stormwater being on the plan. But we can work that out in the interim. This is our first meeting before you for full site plan approval. We do owe you an application for the groundwater overlay protection district. We submitted the report based on Hydro Environmental Sciences, HES. That was submitted with our last submittal. So we believe we've met the requirements of the groundwater protection overlay district for a special permit. We also owe you an application for a very minor steep slopes disturbance in the front, which we will provide the board. We're also, just flip this here. We're well on our way. Developing our objectives, what we would look like in front. We had previously with our sketch plan approval, we had just come up with some rough sketches, but now these are being developed into full working plans, which I believe procedurally this board then receives and then refers to the ARB.
Yeah.
So I guess we're here to answer any questions from the board going forward and to discuss the timing and procedure in terms of referrals to any other boards that need to look at this, and hopefully with the hopes of getting to a public hearing.
Dave and then Steve.
Yeah, I think there's enough information here that if the board wanted to, you could schedule a public hearing. I think, Tim, as soon as you have the kind of the architecturals in a more formalized state, get them to us, we'll get it to the ARB, and then we'll circulate what we have to the other boards that need to review the application.
Okay.
And then that way they could provide comments in time for the public hearing.
Steve?
Yep, thank you. And I understand and agree with what Tim presented for the most part in terms of the approach. We do look for projects to achieve stormwater control when the disturbance is minor, as this is, to the maximum extent practicable. So I think that our questions to you on the relocation of those infiltrators were really, how does their sizing relate to the change in contributing area to those? Are they significantly undersized? How big of a change is it? And is there anything that can be done so that there's no adverse impacts from that relocation? And I'm sure it's relatively easily addressed, but that was the nature of our question on that. Tim, you also did receive some correspondence from the DEP, if I recall correctly, on this regarding their review of stormwater requirements. Is that something that?
I haven't seen that yet, Steve. But
Okay, maybe I'm misremembering that then.
we'll certainly address that.
No, they did submit comments, the DEP, regarding the underground tank and they had a couple other concerns.
I'll look for them. I don't recall seeing the comments, but if I do not have them, I'll reach out to Wendy tomorrow. And
Yeah.
They were relatively minor, but I just want to make sure that you had those.
Good. I like to hear that.
Yeah.
Not very often I get minor comments from the DEP.
Well,
That's true.
it's a relative term, I suppose. Yeah, that's fine. I think one of their comments was related to the fuel tanks, and I think that's worth some additional discussion for the board. If you can touch on the existing location, the proposed location for that, just so that the board is
Yeah.
aware of that change.
Sure. Sure. You'll recall that the fuel tanks are basically right at here. We're proposing to move them up the hill and accessible from the top area above. Those will now be all above ground, right? As opposed to the buried tanks that are there now, which is the general requirement of Westchester County. So, anything the DEP has to say, we'll be able to address that through that, correspondence.
They were specific about leak detection.
Yeah.
From an environmental standpoint. So I think they would like to see, and I would agree with that you have some sort of remote leak detection should those, I know they're double walled, but
Mhm.
anything can happen. And then this way you're alerted earlier than coming in to work the next day and seeing that you've lost, I don't even know how many gallons these are of fuel.
Sure.
So,
As soon as I review the memo, we should be able to address it without a problem.
So we did have some other comments that were, really more minor technical cleanup comments. And certainly, Tim, if you have any questions on those, please let me know and we'll schedule a time to review them. But they're, for completeness of the application, but nothing that would change the proposed layout, really just details.
Any other board member comments or questions? Feel comfortable with scheduling a public hearing?
Very.
yes.
Okay. I'm not sure what the date of, oh, yes, I do know, August 14th.
So I'll make a motion to set the public hearing,
Yes, please.
August 14th.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you.
Next on our agenda is 265 Route 202, a yoga studio application for site plan approval. It's for a proposed change of use to convert the space that was formerly the Chase Bank at 265 Route 202 to a proposed yoga studio. Subject site is located in the BHP district, Business Historic Preservation District. Therefore, as required by Town Code 170-16, all permitted uses in the BHP are subject to site plan approval.
Yeah, that board is definitely teamwork effort.
Hey, Chairman, sorry to interrupt, Chairman. If everybody could just make sure their microphones are not muted, because before we were having a hard time picking a few of you up, please.
Jerry, you button on.
Should be a red light on every mic if they're not muted.
You want us to start from the beginning, Paul?
No, everything's fine, but just before you get going,
I'm
please.
just kidding.
Thanks, John.
Okay,
You'll just,
we're good?
excuse me, just put your mic down a little bit, so
Good.
there you go.
Okay.
Right.
Evening.
Yeah, much
Good
better. Thank
evening.
you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the space to present tonight. My name is Tasia Muniz. I currently own and operate Rebel Yoga in the small town of Mount Pleasant in Thornwood, New York. 2017. Am I good? Since 2017. For the last 6.5 years, we've been women-owned and operated. I can personally say over the course of the last 6.5 years, I have personally witnessed the mental health transformation across a wide demographic that our personal care services do provide. Our offerings aren't limited to just yoga, but we also offer the healing movement of yoga, meditation, wellness, and also workshops and specialty classes on meditation, body awareness, self-awareness, and personal growth. From there, our intention as Rebel Yoga is to create this more modern approach to an ancient practice to kind of break stereotypes of what people thought yoga was, and to create this all-inclusive space for people to come and create their own definition of what yoga is for them. I truly believe that our business will really benefit the town of Somers, and I feel like it'll be a tasteful way to honor the history of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave?
So, Mr. Chairman, as you indicated, because this proposed use is in the Business Historic Preservation District, it needs to go through a little bit more rigorous process. There was a pre-application conference that was held with the applicant. We had a representative from the Open Space Committee, the Landmarks Committee. Mr. Tuma was there from the Building Department. We reviewed the application, so that portion of the process has been completed. We circulated a memo to that effect that indicated the comments that came out of that. One of the comments that will be reflected ultimately as part of the an approval is that the property owner was considering repaving and restriping, and the building department, because they were at the meeting, indicated that, well, if you're going to do that, you need to come to get a permit from the building department. So he's on notice that he needs to do that. But that's separate from this particular application. So the application, the site plan application was forwarded. There's a requirement to have it forwarded to the Open Space Committee, the Landmarks Committee, and the Town Board. So both the Landmark Committee and the Open Space Committee have provided their comments. They have no objection to the proposed use. The Landmarks Committee had a question about parking. And in the review memo that we had provided, we found the old site plan for the Chase Bank. And that included parking calculations, and they had parking reserved or set aside for the Chase Bank of 25 spaces. So I think your class level, I think in the meeting, we had 10 to 15 people.
Correct, yeah. And then there'd be one instructor there that would maybe work the front desk at the same time as
Right.
manager.
One or two staff. So
Yeah.
I think that it would appear that there is more than enough parking to serve this particular use, along with the other uses that are at that site. So there in the review memo, because there's really no site plan changes other than to the interior of the building, we're suggesting that you can waive the site plan requirements for the formal site plan. And then if you feel up to it, you could also waive the scheduling of a public hearing. So those are two things that I would consider or suggest that you consider. And then if the board is okay with this, you could also have essentially a confirmatory resolution where you're approving the site plan subject to there being no objections from the town board, because the town board meets tomorrow night. Matter is on their agenda for discussion because it's an automatic referral as part of the code. So those are the three things that I would suggest you consider as part of this application in an effort to help move this forward.
I mean, there's no change to the site itself, so I
No.
don't see the need
Just new paint.
public hearing. Yeah,
Yeah.
If anything, there's an improvement.
Absolutely.
They paved the parking.
Yep. And nobody likes dark storefronts.
absolutely.
And this has been dark for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little premature to say, but welcome.
Thank you.
That's the kind of the cart before the horse, but yeah. So that would need two motions, I'm assuming. One that will waive
The site plan,
waive the site plan
waive the public.
and public hearing.
Right.
I'll make that as one. We'll make a motion, we waive site plan and public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then instruct staff to prepare a resolution,
Conditioned upon.
conditional.
Yeah,
Oh, you still have to,
Well-
to hear from the town board.
right. So the issue is you could grant a site plan approval conditioned upon that being no objection
From the town board.
from the town board.
Okay.
Right. And you could do that tonight. And then based on the town board's discussion, if they have no objection, then we can prepare the resolution,
Okay.
your signature.
Can they kick that back to us if they had?
If they had,
certain
yeah,
questions?
right.
Yes, if they had concerns or questions, then the matter would come back to you for the August meeting, and then you would consider, and then you could finalize the application at that point.
But if there are if no questions come back,
Then they can
And-
start to prepare.
we can still move forward for the applicant.
Correct. We could prepare, resolution for the signature of the chairman.
Okay.
I just have one question.
Yes, sir.
I heard you talk about the number of parking spaces,
Mhm.
the bank, which was 25.
On the site plan, yes, the approved site plan, right.
So for the whole building,
There's 36 parking spaces for the whole site.
does that take into consideration the new operation that's going on in the field behind?
I'm not aware of any operation.
So it's like a flower picking.
Yeah,
Pot
that,
picking and a farm stand on the weekends.
well, if they're doing that, they don't have a site plan approval that I'm aware of.
It's not come before this board.
Correct. So all I'm considering right now is
Yeah,
current application, and the existing delicatessen, which is listed here, and in the
and the cleaner.
approved, and the cleaners, which is in the approved site plan. So if they're doing something else beyond that, they would need to come back before this board.
I guess maybe in your travels, mention that to Tommy.
I will.
Yeah, please.
So I just want to just clarify. So the entire structure, the entire building, which is inclusive of the Taste Deli and this
Dry cleaner
vacant,
and this vacant. Mhm.
can hold 36 spots.
Correct. There's 36 parking spaces right now.
And we know 25 were approved for the bank side,
Correct.
but they will occupy.
Correct.
And 11 will remain for the deli, theoretically,
And the cleaner.
And the cleaner.
and the dry cleaner.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Motion? Is there a second?
Second,
And I'm assuming the town board has no problems. That's for chairman's signature?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
thank you.
Did we vote?
Didn't
Oh.
vote.
Oh,
We didn't vote. Sorry.
I told you I was putting the horse before the
Wait, I feel like something was.
There was a second?
yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now, thank you. Two thank yous in one night, huh?
Good luck.
You're on a roll.
You know. Kind of had a feeling the way the voting was going, but we should still do it. I know. Right, Sherry? Next is Prodigy Athletics LLC at Rock Ledge Center, which was formerly the Pinewood Business Center. It's for site plan approval and the address is 247 Route 100. It's for the restriping of the existing asphalt drives and to construct 3 landscape planters to create an additional 37 parking spaces on an existing site. The building is currently operating as a warehouse with a partial second floor office, and it's applying for a change of use to permit Prodigy Athletics LLC to operate the proposed athletic training facility. For the record, the property is located at 247 Route 100, and it's in the OLI, which is the Office and Light Industry Zoning District. Good evening.
Good evening. Thomas McDermott from McDermott Architecture. I'm here tonight representing the owner, 247 Route 100 LLC. I'd like to give a little bit of background on the site. So this site was originally used as an asylum. It housed multiple small residential buildings, which were demolished throughout the 70s. And then our subject building, the 243C building, the dark gray one at the bottom, was constructed circa 1977. That was the first of these 3 warehouse buildings that were built on the site by Samaj Corporation. The other 2 buildings were built around 1991, the early 90s, also by Samaj Corporation. Last summer, my client purchased the property from Samaj Corporation and has been slowly updating the property, cleaning up a lot of the deferred maintenance and trying to improve it and lease out some of the vacant spaces. So that's what brings us here tonight. They have a potential client. Prodigy Athletics would like to lease the 243C building to house Prodigy Athletics, which would be for indoor volleyball and practice spaces. Right now, the building is currently used as warehouse. During our, it's currently vacant, but it's approved as warehouse use. So which both of them are permitted uses in an OLI district. The Somers Sports Arena, which operates in the 245B building, which is the one to the left, to the west, currently operates a similar operation. I know like both my children, had birthday parties there. I'm sure a lot of people in the town are familiar with the space. So this would be a similar type use to that. We did some parking analysis and we found that based on the requirements in the code for a health and fitness center, it's one parking space for every 50 square feet. That puts us at, I think, over 800 parking spaces or something for the site, which is excessive based on the actual use that we're proposing. The code is designed more for something like Club Fit or like 24-hour fitness or level fitness, somewhere where you have machines, you have showers, you have a row of treadmills. This is not going to be that type of use. These are open courts, like I said, for volleyball, for practice spaces. You're going to have primarily late middle school and high school kids who are dropped off by their parents, and then picked up at the end. We'll let Oscar from Barton and the Jews talk a little bit about the parking study that we did. So in an effort to improve the parking that's there, we are proposing that we restripe the southern portion of the lot to create an additional, Oscar, how many spots was it? 39? 37. And Steve pointed out in his memo that I have one spot that's a little too close to the corner. I think it's too close to the southeast corner of the building. So we'll lose one. It'll be 36 additional spots that we're looking to get. In an attempt to satisfy the code, we've added a couple landscape planters, thereby reducing the impervious cover by a little over 400 square feet. All of the asphalt that's there right now currently exists. So our goal is to basically formalize that area into arranged parking. All right, we're not proposing that we create any additional impervious surfaces. We're trying to improve what's there. In addition to that, we're adding an accessible entrance to the building. The entrance is already there, but we'd be adding a ramp that would connect to the existing entry on the southern side of the 243C building. I think that summarizes it. I'd like to, open it up to the board and to the town planner to see if they have any questions or.
So Mr. Chairman, actually, I think it's a good approach to reusing the existing pavement to capture additional parking without any impervious surface. I think that's a unique approach. The one comment I did have is that the applicant has submitted a technical report on the shared parking. And under the code, your board is allowed to accept shared parking as an approach for site plan approval. But all I would ask is that you have whoever prepared the report, I'm assuming it's a professional engineer, just stamp and sign the report.
Yes, yeah. My client's spoken to Barton and Judas, and we will submit an updated parking study that's signed and sealed.
Right.
So the other thing that I wanted to touch on quickly was in Steve's memo. He mentions just what the impact to stormwater would be. Right now, we weren't planning on making any changes to the existing stormwater system. I think that the disturbance that we're proposing is so minimal. I included some details for erosion and sediment control. My intent was that any of the drainage inlets and catch basins that we had on site would be protected with the inlet protection detail that we had, and I can clarify that in a memo and call out those locations on the plan to satisfy that. And then the other thought that I had was to install silt fence along the southern property line while the planters are going in. We don't have any intention of curbing the southern border of the property. Right now, there's no curbing. It's just asphalt that meets like landscape vegetation. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Harrison, do you want to come up and speak? So this is Harrison from 247 Route 100 LLC.
So the existing property it borders wind waste, and there's probably anywhere between at any given point along the southern border 10 to 20 feet of thick vegetation that that supports the the space above it and the fence. But yeah. There's no, the plan is to minimize any kind of, to actually decrease the impervious surface of the area and allow us to operate the facility as a fitness center, which we think would be really great for the community, as a lot of people, no doubt, have familiarity with the existing one with the turf soccer fields and the wrestling facility.
Steve,
Yeah, so you,
I have no other comments.
Steve?
Yeah, thank you for addressing, you know, most of my comments in this. You did clarify that there's no new impervious surface. The impervious surface that's being removed for those from those parking islands. I know you said there's no curbing along the southern side of the boundary, but will there be curbing around those planters, or those kind of flush with grade or slightly below grade?
Yeah.
And the question there is really related to, you know, are we changing the stormwater flow direction at all, such that we're creating kind of new points of concentration or anything that we need to be concerned with there? And even though we're not adding impervious surface, by virtue of those islands, are we diverting flow at a different location than where it's leaving the pavement now, and making sure there's no unintended consequences of that?
Understood. And after we received your memo, I discussed that with Harrison. I explained that the goal in doing that is to make sure that we're not creating ponding right on the site, and that we're not taking stormwater and inadvertently diverting it off the site. One thing I failed to touch on were the adjacent uses. Directly south, it's also an OLI district. It's for wind industries. It's used to be previously Breer Karting. And then to the west and to the north are R80 zoning, residential zoning districts. There's a heavy wooded boundary between the current property and then the adjacent residential districts. So they wouldn't really be impacted by this. But to circle back to Steve's question about stormwater, what I had talked over with Harrison was creating basically pills so that they're not touching that southern, border. Stormwater could make their way around them. You know, I understand the intent to, you know, make sure that we're not creating ponding. And currently we don't have topo. I could look at the Westchester County GIS maps. I know that they provide 2-foot contours on there. Steve, would that be acceptable?
Yeah, I think that, you know, as opposed to when you say creating pills, you're talking about kind of creating raised planting bed areas. Right?
Correct, but rather than like a peninsula that attaches to like existing vegetation, it would be sort of isolated islands like that.
And I guess my the topography does drop off from that parking area down towards the adjacent parcel, correct?
It does, yeah, it's fairly steeply.
And right now the water kind of sheets off the edge of the existing pavement down that slope towards that adjacent parcel, correct?
That is correct.
And so my by virtue of breaking up the pavement, and ironically by creating less impervious surface, are you pushing off more water in one location than another and kind of creating a different location for erosion and rills down that slope than the way the water currently flows off of that slope now? Obviously, the slope is there now. We don't have any downhill flooding complaints or erosion on that slope. And, you know, just making sure that you think about kind of where that water is going to leave the slope, and is it going to leave it off the parking in a different area than it does now? Or do we want to make those a little bit more like a bioswale or, stormwater retention area where it's accepting flow from the paved area and reducing the amount that goes off in a different way than just the sheet flow that runs off now? So it's really intended to be more of a minor comment than I think we've given it time for here. But again, just making sure that we're not all of a sudden shunting the water off in a way that doesn't run now, and all of a sudden it's creating some other downstream problem that we didn't intend.
Right. I think that that's a great point. And we were proposing the planters in an attempt to try to satisfy the code. The off-street parking regulations require landscaped islands or peninsulas, like every so many parking spaces. And so this was our attempt you know, to try to improve what was there, but we don't also want to create a situation where we're directing runoff to adjacent properties, creating unnecessary erosion. I actually really like Steve's idea of creating a bioswale, and I think we could work with Oscar from Barton and Judas to design those. Oscar's a registered landscape architect, so he could help us prepare those. Rather than curbing it, we'll create a depression, and then any stormwater that runs into them gets collected in them and then perks into the soil at that location rather than being directed off the site. Harrison, are you okay with that?
I'm okay with that. The one thing I would point out, I'm not an architect or a landscape architect or an engineer, but the space between these two properties is has an easement actually owned by the town of Somers where no one is supposed to be building. And other than the town of Somers, it's actually a right of way from Plum Brook to Somerstown Road. And it is heavily vegetated. I mean, there's very large mature trees there, supporting all the soil around it. So there is some element of bioswale, if I'm using it correctly, currently supporting it. So I'm open to all of that, but that's how it is now.
I don't know if it was your client or your neighbor that basically clear cut, I would call it the east side on the hill there that faces 100 a while back.
Side that faces
The frontage of on 100.
Yes, we took down all the overgrown shrubs and stuff.
So is that bank stabilized now?
Yes, that has experienced no change since we cleaned up that fence.
Okay.
There's a lot of deferred maintenance on the property, and there's been no change there.
Board member comments?
Do the planters, I saw them on the plans, they don't impede any fire lanes or anything like that?
No, and one thing I could submit to the board was I actually did a fire pumper truck path all the way through the site. I could provide that. I have it in my CAD file. Yeah, I can make all the turns. Like, the only issue was the one that Steve brought up, and you know, in laying this out, I just must have missed it. That one parking space in the bottom southeast corner is a little bit too close, so we'll lose that one space.
Yeah, the Bureau of Fire Prevention will probably want to see that movement.
Question, I noticed that when Tim was up here, he mentioned that he got a memo for, we're obviously directly across the street from Lawton Adams. He got a memo from the DEP. Other than Steve's memo, were there any other memos that came through? I didn't see anything.
I don't recall anything coming from
Okay.
on this. Although we sent them, let me back up. We sent them the application, and they said that they didn't have a time to get a review comment for this meeting, but they'll have it for the August meeting.
Okay.
So you can expect something.
Is it possible to still schedule the public hearing, or?
Well, it would be my
Yeah,
recommendation.
do we even need one minor application?
Sounds like they've got it under control.
I'm looking for some feedback here. Feel comfortable with scheduling a public hearing? August meeting? Yes, yeah. Okay,
If Steve feels
Steve, you?
Yeah, my only comment to the board was that you know, we defer review on the parking calculations and analysis to the town planner or town's traffic consultant as needed.
Okay.
We commented on the parking space more from because we saw it, but we didn't review any of the parking calculations. That's not in our scope.
And you're going to submit a not necessarily revised, but another one stamped. Okay.
Yeah, and I'll revise the site plan to remove that one parking space, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to create bioswales in those areas, which Harrison, to just clarify, they're basically planters that are depressed.
Great.
That's all. So it's instead of building a curb and building it up, you're lowering
That's
it.
better for
Yeah.
flowers.
And with
It's true, right? Less curb that you have to replace in the winter.
question for Dave, with them applying for a change of use permit, that we don't deal with that, and there's no zoning change for that, right? Because the change of use still falls under the OLI zoning.
Yeah, when you have a change of use, it requires a site plan approval.
Yeah.
So that's why they're here.
Oh,
but-
so this isn't about the parking per se.
Well, the parking is part of the evaluation of the site plan because of the use. And so, what they've done is they've actually, gone out and they've looked at each of the individual uses. They look at the peak time that those uses and the anticipated traffic flow from each of the uses. And that's how they came up with the evaluation that there's enough parking on the site because uses have different peak.
By different hours, yeah.
Right, yeah, so to elaborate on what Dave said, both this building and the 245B building that houses the Summer Sports Arena operate on a different schedule than the 247 building. The 247 building is currently warehouse and office and daycare, and those are operated from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Whereas these two buildings are operated from basically 5 to 9 p.m. and then on weekends. So the peak uses, they alternate with each other. And that's why we really felt strongly that we have enough parking on the site. By providing this additional parking there, we're providing adjacent parking to the buildings. We're meeting the intent of the code.
All right. Thank that. So now I understand a little.
Yeah, sorry, the important detail that I left out.
Yeah, that's all right.
A lot to cover.
Thank you.
Yeah, because actually, if you took the interpretation, you'd have to meet that 80.
800.
It was
Yeah.
over 800 speed.
Yeah. 800, I'm sorry, 800, yeah.
Really,
Which is, yeah. So,
More parking than space.
then I'll make a motion that we have a schedule. I'm sure, sorry.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Where you're adding the parking, is the flow of traffic such that you would need any traffic calming measures to slow people down so that the people coming out of the parking spots can safely come out of the parking spots? In other words, have you added traffic? Have you added parking along a corridor that people travel through? Like I'm a sporty person. I'm going from point A to point B. I've got to get to my team.
Yeah, there's,
Yeah.
there's some, I don't know if everyone's familiar with, I don't know if everyone's familiar with the whole history of the site, but back in the early 1900s when it was an asylum is, a little less relevant than the fact that prior to my partner and I purchasing the property, this building was illegally being used as a volleyball training facility and was shut down by the Department of Buildings for not having the required permits. That's part of what triggered the former owners to sell it, I believe. And my partner and I actually have spent a lot of time, my partner specifically, his kids have spent a lot of time training in the sports facility here. So there was a real personal connection to trying to improve the site. But that's all to say that this has been used basically for the purpose we're proposing, and that people were just parking willy-nilly as they felt without striping, without signage. And to my knowledge, there's been no accidents. I've been in contact with all the current tenants for a long time now, and there's never been an issue. I think it would be wise to put some cautionary signs at this southern entrance because it is tight and people are busy and they're dropping their kids off and it's a legitimate concern. There was some contemplation about making it one way, just an exit here, but really the buildings are going to be used separately. This is going to have its main entrance here. This is going to have its here. And I think that allowing, as there's been a historic demonstrated use of it being used as both entry and exit, I think just putting warning signage, to be aware that it's a tight corner would just be the wise thing to do going forward.
I'm not a traffic engineer, so I'm just bringing it up for the engineers to consider it. You see where I am going, Steve?
Just like to note that the way that the traffic flow on the property currently operates.
I'm sorry, hold on. Just your name for the record, please.
Yes. I'm Oscar Villavicencio. I'm with Barton LaJudas. I'm a landscape architect. I prepared the traffic, the parking report. So something I would like to point out is that the driveway that traverses the property is bidirectional. And most of the people that use that first parking lot using the northern parking lot exit through the northern exit. So rarely is there you would have a situation where someone is speeding through from the north end and exiting on the southern end. Really, people that use the northern parking lot exit through the northern access way. And one of the recommendations in the report is that the parking lot should be more clearly signalized once the building is in use, that it'll, that the people will be directed to park on the southern lot, people using the C building. So in essence, they're separate lots, but they share a driveway.
When you say signalized, you mean signage?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So, yeah, so in essence, people using the southern lot are gonna wanna enter through the southern exit, and people using the northern lot through the northern exit. That's the rationale with the parking.
Any other questions or concerns?
I'm good with it.
Make a motion to set the public hearing for the August meeting.
Second,
It's 14.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is it, Steve, do you have any problems with having staff prepare a draft resolution?
I think that'd be a question for Dave, but I have no problems with that, no.
Dave,
I have no problems with that.
board members?
Sounds like a good idea.
Okay, so we'll have a draft resolution for you. Probably open and close. My guess is we'll open and close the public hearing at the August meeting, and we'll have a resolution.
Excellent.
Thank you so
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, our last item is, as you can see, resolution 2405 was really for the Liam and Sabrina McCarthy, 109 Mayapack Avenue. And it needs to be changed from 2405 to 2406. Because unfortunately, 25 was originally assigned to the fire district, 295 Route 100. It's just a clerical error.
It's an
Administrative, excuse me. So our motion is that we would like to, I would make a resolution, I'd make a motion, we change resolution 2405 to 2406.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Our next meeting is August 14th, 2024, and you will still be with us?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Yay.
We'll vote on when you,
Okay,
Oh, yeah, do we vote on his?
absolutely.
Or-
Well, he's never going.
Got a motion?
We'll set that up for the August meeting.
Yeah. So don't make too many retirement,
no vote, no plans.
no plans, no.
He's staying right here.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the heat.